You know, I've always been kind of fascinated by survival stories. Probably because I'm Scottish and just getting through daily life is a bit of a survival story. Anyway, I like the idea of people trapped in seemingly impossible situations, forcing them to resort to intelligence, ingenuity, and determination to find a way out. There's been a shit ton of films made on the subject over the years, some based on fact and others complete fiction, but one of my favourite examples is an old Jimmy Stewart movie from 1965 called Flight of the Phoenix. And no, I'm not going to talk about the remake from the 2000s, which was the same exact story, only with inferior actors and writing that was about 30 IQ points lower. The original Flight of the Phoenix is a kind of action survival drama about a crew of oil workers stranded in the Sahara Desert after their plane crash lands in a sandstorm. Pretty soon, it becomes obvious that they ain't going to be walking away from this one. The nearest outpost is 100 miles away across burning, uninhabited deserts, and with little hope of rescue, their prospects look bleak indeed. Well, until one of the group comes up with a novel idea, using the wreckage and the one remaining functional engine from their crashed plane to construct a whole new aircraft that can fly them out of there. It sounds goofy as fuck, but it's actually a pretty cool idea that neatly subverts the usual tropes of films like this. Instead of following the group as they make some perilous trek through hostile terrain to get to safety, having to contend with environmental hazards along the way, the bulk of this movie sees them staying right where they are, trying to figure out ways of overcoming the physical and technical challenges facing them. Now don't get me wrong, it might sound like a bit of a boring premise, but what makes Flight of the Phoenix so compelling is the slowly building, expertly crafted tension as supplies run low, casualties mount, tempers and rivalries flare, and dangerous personal revelations threaten to tear the group apart. It's a race against time kind of story as the men struggle with the massively complex task of building a whole new aircraft using only the most basic tools before their supplies run out. Will they be able to put aside their differences and work together, or will clashing personalities and conflicting objectives drive the group apart? Will they stand a chance of completing such a massive project with such limited resources? And if they do, will the thing even fly, or will it crash and kill all of them? All of these questions help to sustain the pace of what should on the surface be a pretty pedestrian story, and it's helped both by a decent amount of technical knowledge on the part of the writers and a cast of interesting, complex characters played by veteran actors who know how to get the very best out of the material. I mean, where else are you going to see Jimmy Stewart, Richard Attenborough, Peter Finch and Ernest Borgnine in the same movie? Borgnine is awesome as a mentally unstable drill worker whose mind slowly unravels as the days drag on. Finch plays a British Army officer who quickly takes command of the situation with just the right amount of stiff upper lip, and Richard Attenborough turns in one of his best performances as the plane's alcoholic co-pilot, struggling just to hold it together. One sympathises with that. The scene where he finally breaks down is a hell of a thing to watch. But naturally, it's Jimmy Stewart himself who steals the show as Frank Towns, the pilot of the plane who eventually becomes a reluctant leader for the group. He's definitely not your classic hero who leaps into action in a crisis situation. He's old and cynical and set in his ways. He doesn't get on particularly well with the others, and he instinctively rejects suggestions from less experienced members of the group. But as the story unfolds and more willing candidates gradually fall away, the man slowly takes the responsibility of leadership on, learning to put aside his old prejudices, and as a result, the others begin to trust him and look up to him. And I guess that's what I find so appealing about Flight of the Phoenix. It's a patient, restrained kind of movie that really takes its time to delve into its characters, their motivations and weaknesses, and the shifting power dynamics within the group. The way people tend to follow the man who projects confidence and decisiveness, often to their detriment, while overlooking the quieter but more intelligent guy sitting on the sidelines. If I had to criticise the film in some way, I'd say that I was deeply disappointed by the lack of diversity, representation, and strong female characters showing the boys how it's done. Just kidding. Believe it or not, it was actually possible to make really good movies for decades without having to meet some arbitrary quota dreamed up by the studio HR department, and Flight of the Phoenix is proof that Hollywood was doing just fine without the message. Ultimately, while it's not trying to be some big bombastic action extravaganza, Flight of the Phoenix delivers a solid, compelling story with interesting characters, competent direction, and some brilliantly tense moments. Watching someone try to coax an engine into life has never felt more meaningful. It's one of those great little stories of brains over brawn, a film that emphasises the value of creative thinking, resourcefulness and technical expertise over strength and raw determination. A film that reminds us it's still possible to think rather than fight your way out of a tough spot, and well, that's probably something we could all do with remembering once in a while. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.